welcome back to the Tea and a Buddy podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're going to talk about a recent video that I made on TikTok.
Yes.
Because it's blowing up.
A video you made.
Blowing up
All
to
your
epic
fault.
proportions. There's so much scrutiny on this video, you have no idea. And it actually relates to a podcast we did an episode of the podcast we did a while ago.
I'm not sure what podcast number it was. We probably should have looked
talked
that up
about,
before we started talking about this.
It concerns, why, or, if British children are taught about the American Revolutionary War.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is simply they're not. Goodbye. It's just...
Yeah, no, there was this TikTok that was going around where someone said, how do British people learn about the Revolutionary War or something? So, of course, people were stitching it, talking about it.
Yeah, a few British people did. And it was like, we're not taught about it.
Yeah. Which we've discussed, as Dominic mentioned, we did a whole podcast on this. They're not taught about the Revolutionary War in Britain, which just the other day when Dominic made this TikTok that picked up a little bit of traction. I mean, traction. I wouldn't call it viral or anything.
No, it went semi-viral. It stopped. It stopped when it went around the track.
It picked up a little bit of traction, but and Dominic and I were discussing that when I originally found out that he had not learned about the Revolutionary War, I wasn't, infuriated like some of these people seem to be. But I do remember being, I think surprised.
They're not... Well, some of the comments, I don't think they were infuriated at the fact that we didn't learn about it.
Well, I was just surprised because, coming from an American perspective, which most of the people who commented on this TikTok were coming from as well, we're... In America. You sound like Emily in
Paris. I'm providing an American perspective on fashion.
Well, I can only talk from my perspective, can't I? But we're taught that the American Revolution, obviously, in this country was a big deal because
it was a big deal.
This country wouldn't exist, This country would not exist. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. I think we also maybe touched on that in our previous podcast. But I was not upset at all that they were not taught about the revolution in Britain. I was surprised because I thought, America's a big country. It was a big event that happened over here. But again, that was just me thinking about it kind of in a small-minded way, right?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it from whoa, we're Americans and that was a big thing. We became a country because of that. And so, of course, you would have learned about it.
There's a disparity, and for some people, it's a matter of pride.
Yeah, what do you mean?
The whole American Revolution thing.
Oh, yes.
But it's...
Because we won. Right?
We won. We won,
We won, it's a little bit
it's
beating on our chests.
It's beating the chests and stuff like that, and which you don't really see unless you're talking about the World Cup in the UK, Oh, we won in 1966. Yeah. And it's you get every other nation going, and they never shut up about it.
Yeah.
In
1966.
In 1966, England won the World Cup. You don't really see that, So, talking about historical things, Britain had this massive empire. It was
In case you're new. In case you never heard about this.
Some people might not know, that Britain at one time, had this massive empire.
Yeah.
And it was quite big.
Yeah.
A quarter of the earth, I think. Yeah. At its biggest, I think. And the 13 colonies, the original 13 colonies of the United States were part of that.
Yes.
And, there was it was all taxes from the king and all that, people watch Hamilton and all that. And, it's just kind of when it's history's written by the victors is is my mantra throughout this.
Yeah.
And yes, the US, the Continental Army...
we were the victors in that case.
In
yes.
that case.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a certain degree of rhetoric that comes in, and it gets repeated down the line, which is what was getting repeated in the comments, you know, like, oh, a bunch of farmers.
Well, I think we've,
kicked your behinds back to.
Just to interrupt you, and I think maybe we will read some of the comments in a minute, but I think we're learning now, and I don't know if it's true in other countries, because again, I live in America, and we largely just learn about what's going on here, don't we? You know, at the end of the day. And I think that's somewhat true in most countries around the world. You know, they want to focus on what's happening at home, right?
Yes.
I mean, you touch a little bit on this is going on and that's going on, but for the most part, you're focusing at home. But I think in general, we're learning more and more that, particularly in this country, the history that we were maybe taught, the history that our parents were taught, the history our grandparents and their grandparents were taught, were very much skewed in the positive. You know, they were spun with a positive.
Positive.
They were, you know, they left out the negative bits of everything. Yes. They just focused on the positive for the most part. They kind of twisted the facts a little bit sometimes.
As they did in Britain too.
And this is, and it's just like people are becoming more enlightened. I feel like we're in like another age of enlightenment. People are, and it's because
the technological age of enlightenment.
Well, sort of, isn't it? Because it is because of the internet. Really, somebody knows about something because
the media can't control what's coming in anymore.
And with that is also a lot of disinformation, of course, but there's a lot of good that has come out of it as well. I think people's eyes are being opened about things that they were just blissfully unaware of before.
And we're not, I'm not saying this is a sole American thing, where it's just like, they believed one thing forever, and then the rest of the world has a different story. It happens in Britain too, because there's a lot of people who are very way about everything, and it's just kind of like, but that's not
not the full story.
It's not the full story.
And
it's not the grand scheme of things.
And that's really the only point to make, isn't it? It's just like, yes, we won that battle and we gained our independence.
Yeah, which is a big deal. It was like great,
Yeah.
But there are other factors to consider.
But it's not the full story, is it?
No, it's been very oversimplified, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I think so.
If you read those comments, that people are just like, oh, so you're telling me just a bunch of farmers?
Yeah. Shall we read some of the comments now, or do you want to talk about anything before that?
I mean, I don't mind. I mean, yeah, we can read some of the comments, and I can talk about what I was meaning. I was gonna maybe respond to. I did respond to some of them, but
Yeah. Okay. So basically, you replied to this. You made a video. You just simply said,
we didn't learn about it. Basically, in schools in Britain, you get like a greatest hits package in history growing up. I mean, obviously, like if you go to university or something, you study history, there's going to be like, it's going to go into the minutiae.
Yeah.
And the finer details of,
greatest hits, meaning like the biggest events.
The biggest events. So, 1066, William the Conqueror, the Peasants' Revolt, which I think may have just been afterwards. I don't know, like Wat Tyler's rebellion and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Then it kind of like skips to the Tudor era and Henry VIII and all his wives, and divorced, beheaded, died, divorced, beheaded, survived, whatever,
Yeah.
And then, of course, Bloody Mary and Elizabeth, the Elizabethan age, and then it goes to the Victorian era. And then it's kind of like, oh yeah, and World War II, World War One and World War II, and then nothing. It's like, here we are in the present, you know? It's kind of like skips over like that. It's kind of, you know?
Yeah.
And so, during like the period between the Victorian era and
World War One.
Well, no, not the Tudor era and the Victorian era.
Yeah.
It's not a lot. It's covered maybe King George, you know. Oh yeah. You know, maybe the Spanish Armada, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, so stuff that's like, oh yeah, you know, and nothing's really said. Oh, and by the way,
wars with the French.
The wars with the French, Napoleonic wars,
are
discussed, and that is where the American Revolution comes in. It's like, oh yeah, and we lost a bunch of stuff at that time, but you know, at its greatest, the British Empire at its like greatest, at its like largest, you could say, was like 1919.
Well,
I think that was like, yeah, that's it.
You replied to some of the people telling them that.
Yeah. I mean, some of the people are just like, oh, well, you know, that was the start of...
Well, you called it a minor skirmish, didn't you?
I called it a minor skirmish.
You said in the grand scheme of things.
In the grand scheme of things, and people were defending that in the comments, you know, they were going, oh, yeah, no, he said in the grand scheme of things. He didn't mean like, oh, it was just that some minor skirmish had happened and that was it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it wasn't. It was a war that went on from like 1773 to maybe to 1780. It was like a 10 years kind of like protracted battle.
Yeah.
And then there was some weird kind of like the War of 1812 that happened.
If you watch Outlander,
Britain comes back and burns down Washington, D.C.
If you have read Outlander or if you watch the series Outlander, you can kind of see like how long it's building up for a while, and then it's just like here and there battles, and it was for some reason. And I think when I was in school I thought that too, like it was just a war. Like one day we were like, you know, okay, 7 a.m. start the war,
7 a.m.
you know what I
start
mean?
The war,
you know, 7 p.m. end the war.
End the war. Yeah.
It was that kind
people
of
think,
like,
oh, it ended in 1776. You know, people are like, 1776, that was it. You know, it ended.
Yeah.
You know, we defeated and we signed it, and it was like, nope. It's not, you know, the minutiae, the finer details, it's like, they signed a Declaration of Independence, and they, you know, presented it to the king, and it was just kind of like, oh, you know, and the battles went on.
Yeah.
And, you know, the British were defeated at, you know, I think... in New York, I think. Once they were kicked out of New York, that was the end.
You guys listening to have to remember that it's been a while since Dominic and I were in school, so it's just kind of like, you know, this is what we can remember. And,
well, this is what I've kind of learned growing up. Since, you know, like, well, obviously coming here, everybody's banging on about it. You know, when I first got on the internet, people were talking about, oh yeah, 4th of July, and I'm just like, okay, what's that all about then?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was like, what's that supposed to mean? It's like, oh, it's the time when we, you know, got you out of here and da-da-da. It's like, oh, is it? And it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, do you guys celebrate it? No, we don't know, you know? And people are like, well, why would they? And it's just like, well, yeah, because if you look at the grand scheme of it, which I keep saying, the French helped the farmers. As these people like, oh, it's a bunch of farmers.
Yeah, well, let's read.
It wasn't. It wasn't a bunch of farmers. It was some people were farmers who enlisted to fight. Yes, but you know, Washington was General Washington. He was a general.
Yeah, it was
organized. It was a ragtag band of underdogs.
Yeah.
You know, and... I
mean, I suppose they were sort of underdogs in the way
that they had military experience, you know, and they had the help of the French. Who were like, yeah, stick it to the bloody English.
Okay, well, before we continue on with that, let's just read. Somebody just replied, facts, every country focuses on their own greats.
Yes.
Which is kind of what we said before. Like,
yes.
You know.
I mean, Britain even went so far as to put great in its title, didn't it? the history of Great Britain.
Well, I think that...
And very great it was,
I think that used to be the case more so hopefully than now. I mean, we'd have to get a kid in here to tell us like what they're learning now.
Yeah, I mean,
and they should teach the failures.
They don't call it world history anymore, do they? They call it just like.
What do you mean?
They call it something else, I think, don't they?
Well,
I have no idea. I mean, I just.
You mean in America?
In America, yeah.
No, yeah, they call it. I mean, I assume
world history.
World history. You focus on world history for like 1 year of your education. It's like
we never really learned world history.
In Texas, we did Texas history as well for like a year. Yeah. I can't remember what years in school we learned these things, but we had Texas history, we had American history, and we had world history. Each one is like a year long, and then you have other aspects of. All before that, it's just like general history.
General history. This is what happened in the world.
But I think this person is right.
Big happening there.
That back then, that was what you taught. I mean, you need to focus on the failures, though. You would think as well, because of that whole those who don't remember history are doomed to repeat it or whatever. It's just like you need to learn the failures of your own people as well, I think, in order to not commit those failures again. You know what I mean? Somebody just asked you, so you're not taught world history, and you couldn't remember if that was like.
I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember. Yes, it focused mostly on British and English history. Sometimes, remember when I went to school in Wales? Actually, in high school, I had this history teacher. And it wasn't even, we weren't even like learning about, the American Revolution or anything, but he just kind of like, I guess someone must have asked a question about something, about America or something, like the Vietnam War, funnily enough.
Yeah.
And he goes, and he just kind of went on this kind of like, it's rhetoric, he said, it's rhetoric. The Americans put out this thing of like, there's no way to win Vietnam. There was no way to win over there. It's like, you lost. That's it.
Yeah.
Just say you lost and move on.
The thing about world history that I can remember, I think that our world history in this country is what we learn about, and we have to learn about it because before the American Revolution, there was no America, so we had to learn world history in order to what was happening in the world before we became a country. You guys don't so much have that because British history
European
goes back so far. Did you have European history?
Well, I mean, the Spanish Armada, the wars with France, the wars with
But you're learning about that in relation
in
to
context of British history. Of course, of course you would,
But that's what I mean. Like you didn't have, because British history goes back so far.
American Revolution, and then it was just like nothing. It was just like we're just building the country then.
After the American Revolution, then I think the next main point you learn about is the Civil War.
Yeah,
which
is the greatest hits package. Yes. And I mean, actually, greatest hits package. It's just like, the most popular things.
The main things.
The most popular things that happened in history.
The biggest events, But to me, I always look at the American Revolution sort of as, and you said, don't say that, but I always look at the American Revolution sort of as a civil war because we were not America.
Yes.
Before we won that battle.
It was declaring independence from the UK. Independence.
If you look at anything that's set during that time, there literally were, just as there were during the Civil War, there literally were, families fighting each other.
Yeah.
So it's like...
They'd be like, I think we should remain loyal to the crown. Well, no.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't want to pay that tax. I don't even know who that guy is.
Yeah.
Get him out of here.
Or you had people who stayed behind in Britain then coming over to fight. So you had, cousins fighting each other.
Yeah.
That's my cousin there. Yeah. And they're just like, what are you doing fighting for these rebels? Why are you rebelling? They were called
rebels, yeah.
Yeah, we were the rebels. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, the Americans were the rebels. I mean, it's difficult to say Americans because, again, we were not American at that time.
It was a revolution.
Yeah.
The Revolutionary War.
So I look at it like it was sort of like a civil war. You know, people like to go, we kicked your butt, you know.
And it led to led to the greatest superpower the world has ever seen.
Yeah, well, that was another comment. Let me see. Yeah, here you go. A minor skirmish when a bunch of farmers defeated the most powerful nation of all time. And you said, or no, not of all time. Sorry, they probably would reply if they heard me say that, of the time, because of course they think America is the yes. Most powerful. And you just replied, with help from France.
With help from France.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the reason France helped us
was because we were at war with Britain was at war with
France.
France, yeah.
Yeah. Britain was at war with France, so France must have just been like, "Ooh, yeah, those people over there in the colonies. Oh,
we'll lose them. They're
rising up. Let's go help them. You know,
let's go help them." And I don't know what France was getting out of it. I mean, obviously, probably thought,
just to piss Britain off. Probably.
No, it was more than that.
Well, to take away a source of income.
We'll get some land or something.
Maybe.
Like there was the Louisiana Purchase, which occurred, which France had some colonies down, and they had most of Louisiana.
Well, yes.
And I think a little bit of
they had some of Canada. Obviously, they speak French in Canada, but
that's why there's French Cajun. Crawfish.
But yeah, to that. Oh well, someone then commented, "Isn't it seen as a proxy war between UK and France since the French supplied and trained the colonists?" Yeah, the French helped them out. I mean, I think I'm not sure about this, but I'm pretty sure Benjamin Franklin went to Paris because I think he was the foreign secretary of the interim government. He went to ask for help. He went to ask for help. Yeah, I mean, I presume so. I think he was also going to London to try and to broker a peace or to say, just give it up. We don't want to be part of the crown anymore. Yeah. Stop. So one of the reasons why America was rebelling, why the colonists were rebelling, is because they were being taxed, right? They were being taxed to fund a war against France. Yes, they were being taxed to fund a war against France. So it was just like, oh, I have an idea. Let's go to France and see if they'll help us because Britain is currently fighting them. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yes. That's what it was. And so France gifted America the Statue of Liberty, Someone says, minor skirmish. Fraternity. Yeah. Egality. Was it? Liberté, fraternité, égalité. That's how it goes. There you go. The rallying Someone cry. Says, in quotation marks, minor skirmish. Yes. Britain exclaims with its whole chest from the back seat. Yes, because there's this, kind of way of thinking that developed over time that America was this great superpower that, leads the world in everything. And is the only free country, and everybody wants to be like America. And it's true, there's a lot of people that emigrate to America. But, the most technologically advanced country, all that kind of stuff, Yeah. And it's yeah, someone said, I mean, it's understandable most countries don't teach their younger generations about the times they got their asses handed to them. And it's just to be fair, they don't, do they? They don't, no. I mean, I think someone replied to them, we don't really learn much about the Vietnam War other than all the protests that were happening, and and I think this was an American replying to them. They said because that's another kind of moment in things a Vietnam veteran, no, but people gonna go, well, why were we in Vietnam? Yeah, and it's just I don't know, but we were helping them. Something about
communism.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone replied,
communism
true,
bad.
If the U.S. does learn the Vietnam War, we learn more about the protests and such back home rather than the lack of winning on that front.
Yes.
Someone says, in quotation marks, not important enough. Just the beginning of the end of the British Empire. Controlled a quarter of the world until the colonies flipped you off. And you just replied to them, the British Empire was at its greatest, in parentheses, largest, in 1919. Which was well after.
About 150 odd years after the American Revolution.
Yeah.
I mean, by the First World War, that was the end of the British Empire.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That was it.
Well, they were putting so much
India was ready to get out of there,
yeah. Yeah.
And, again, it was measured, the empire was measured with, and it was, America, it might have a big military, but, when you compare it with, the economy,
yeah,
I think Britain at its, with the East India Company and all that, it controlled trade pretty much throughout most of the world.
Yeah.
At one point.
Yeah, somebody, let me see.
And I'm not saying this oh yes, Britain is so great, and da-da-da. I'm just saying it's a fact. It's out there, and it's it's not putting anyone down. It's not saying, oh, America's, not as great as it thinks it is, or whatever, It's just oh, that's a fact,
Yeah.
And, the fact that America has a large military,
Yeah.
And Britain doesn't. It's about half not even half the size it was.
Yes. They're arguing amongst themselves, and someone replies to someone else that's arguing with them. The most powerful economic force and military force in the world, and in history, period, and the most technologically advanced. They're talking about America there. And it's just possibly, probably the most powerful army, I guess. I mean, you and I were kind of talking about that.
Maybe China has an edge somewhere. Russia, I'm not sure. I think Russia might have bloated its figures up.
Well,
because again,
I think you're considered to be powerful, unfortunately, if you have nuclear weapons, right? So all the countries that have those are probably considered pretty powerful.
Yes.
But America does probably, and I'm, again, just because of the size of the country and the number of people in the army, maybe we have one of the largest armies in the world. Maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
A lot of that way of thinking comes from World War II as well. It's oh yes, America saved the world.
But the most technologically advanced?
Japan. Yes, that's...
I think that's a stretch.
That's a bit of a stretch, yeah.
I mean, Japan? Japan is very advanced.
In the world of banking, it's a little bit behind the times.
Well, it's behind even Britain, let's say. Let's just start another argument.
Technologically advanced, it's what are we saying here? Just because you've got an iPhone and...
Britain had chip.
You're comparing yourself to an iPhone and people in India don't have them?
Britain had chip and pin years before we got it over here. Years and years.
Yeah, this is banking systems now, yeah.
Yeah. And then Britain went to tap. And I'm saying Britain, I'm sure it's the same in Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
And probably Britain did it because Europe did it. Because, again, Germany, I think, is a very powerful country still. Yeah. But I know Japan and, South Korea and probably
Well, somebody said,
China.
South Korea is quite technologically advanced.
Yeah.
And they've got...
Yes.
Everything, Yeah.
They're
starting to freaking put chips in people now.
Don't say things
so you can directly interface with the internet. You'd be like the Lawnmower Man.
But yeah, the comments are basically the same kinds of things over and over. Just people pissed off in general. And my biggest question is, why are they pissed off, though? honestly...
It's like, were you there? You know, it's like the Napoleon kind of thing. You know, like Ridley Scott telling everybody, goes, yeah, it's historically inaccurate. It's like, were you there? No. Then get out of here.
It's like they take it so personally.
Well, they see it as an attack when somebody goes, oh, that's not it.
Yeah.
No, that's not it.
And the thing is okay, all you said at the end of the day was that you're not taught about it in school. You feel like because it was seen as a minor skirmish in the grand scheme of things. Someone else said, and I didn't read her comment, if you had a history as long as Britain, it probably is considered minor because there's just so much to talk about.
World War II was relatively recent, so that's fresh in the minds, you know. It's like...
You probably could have had an entire, 12 years of education just doing British history. Forget math, forget English language, forget, PE, all the other subjects that you have to do in school.
Yeah.
You probably could have spent all day, every day for 12 years just learning your own history if you learned about every single event that happened, right?
Every single event, yeah.
So it's like saying that it just, it just wasn't that big. And maybe we needed to find a British teacher
because
to
the
ask,
thing is, it wasn't that big. It's like, oh, it wasn't that big. Oh, poor you,
Oh, it created the world. Oh, someone said the world's only superpower. Well, I don't think America's the only superpower, first of all. But it created the world's only superpower. I'd say that was a pretty big event.
And somebody said the world's first superpower.
Somebody said first. Somebody said only, though. Oh, yeah, the person that said the world's first superpower. It's like, Dominic and I were both like...
The Roman Empire was nothing then, was it?
The Roman Empire, yeah.
Yeah.
The Roman Empire, and also, like, the British Empire. Like, it ain't called Great Britain for nothing. You know what I mean? Like, and believe me, I am not one of these people. There are plenty of creators across the internet who pander to their audience because the audience is primarily British. We don't have a primarily British audience.
I think it's mostly Americans.
So we are... we're risking having this discussion. It for a biscuit. Yeah. Having this discussion with our audience.
Annoying you all.
Yeah, that we're gonna annoy you all. I mean, maybe you all feel the same way.
And it's like we weren't there.
Yeah.
It's like we weren't there. You're getting wound up about it. It's like we weren't there.
Well, it's like, why?
We've only got, like, facts and history takes and, hot takes.
And I would genuinely be interested in talking to a teacher in Britain or somebody who puts together, the curriculum for British school children.
And tries to be non-biased in it.
Yeah. No. I just genuinely would like to ask somebody, why is that not included in British schooling? Why is... why?
I mean,
just
probably like now is, India's independence covered, the fall of the British Raj,
Yeah.
That's got to be covered too. Mm-hmm. That happened too.
And it's like, maybe it's different. I think the creator that you stitched the TikTok to pointed out that maybe it's different now. Maybe it's different depending on where in Britain you go to school. Yeah. Maybe some teachers do cover it, but yours didn't. You didn't have any teachers that covered it.
Didn't even know America was a thing until I was like 25. No, I mean, I didn't know.
And that's it.
I didn't know.
That's it. You didn't learn it in school, and that's it. That's really just it. Like, that is a fact. You did not learn it in school. We can only guess as to the reason why we didn't learn it in school. And
it's when I was originally looking up why it wasn't taught, and people go, well, it's part of the 100 Years' War with France, one of the many wars we were having with France.
Yeah.
It's like...
It was seen as a battle that happened during that time.
It was a protracted battle, yes.
And maybe in the 100 Years' War with France, which this was the the second 100 Years War.
The second 100 Years War, yes. The first one
wasn't
good enough.
We're going to do 100 years.
I think I don't know if it's called the 100 Years War because it lasted for 100 years.
You don't think so?
I'm not. I think it's because like it felt like it did.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, again, we'd have to look that up, but I would assume if it was called that.
I mean, maybe the first one was like 100 years. Because there's that joke.
How long was the 100 Years War? You know,
and it lasted 2 years.
No, and it's like 100 years. You know,
100 odd years. Yeah, and then the second one, you know, it was like France and Britain, they were always like historically at each other's throats.
Yeah.
And nobody knows why.
But look, now we've got a wonderful statue in the New York Harbor to honor France's help.
Which used to be it was like copper, wasn't it?
It's copper, yeah.
Yeah, but now it's oxidized.
It is copper.
It's all copper, and it's been oxidized now, so it's all green. Yeah. You need to clean that. I
think they talked about it at one time.
And then France is going to pay for it.
Oh, gosh. Okay. We have to stop. We apologize if you were triggered by this content, but this is just how we feel. I don't know. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. We apologize if this hurt your heart. Follow us on social media and leave us an angry comment if you feel the need to do so. We will
shake your fist at us.
We will take it into consideration. We're at T-Buddy, TeaButty on Instagram, X. I have to start saying X.
The site formerly known as Twitter. Everybody just calls it Twitter.
Instagram, X.
Threads.
TikTok.
Yeah.
Threads. We don't post anything on Threads.
I post occasionally, but there's a couple of people on there still, yeah. Because people have migrated.
I thought everybody moved to Threads and then everybody just gave up.
Just kept on Instagram or whatever, or went to TikTok.
YouTube, you know where we are. Thank you to our patrons for sticking with us. We really appreciate your support, and we will talk to you all next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.